So welcome everyone to this research refresher workshop on annotated bibliographies sponsored by Forsyth Library. My name is Brittany Squire and I'm the outreach specialist for the library, and I'm excited to help and host you all this afternoon while you learn more about this topic. Just a couple of notes. I will ask that you go ahead and remain on mute during the presentation, but if you have any questions, please feel free to type those in the chat and we'll make sure and get to them. And there will be some time at the end for some Q&A as well. I'll also mention that this session is being recorded, and so we will be able to provide that online after the event, so you can go back and refer to any of the content shared this afternoon. And then finally, before we get started, just by joining us today, you are all eligible for a prize basket sponsored by Forsyth Library. So be sure to stick with us until the end when we'll draw for the winner for that prize. So now I would like to go ahead and introduce today's library expert, Robin Hartman. Robin is our information and digital literacy librarian, and she is also the liaison to the College of Education. So I am excited to turn the program over to her at this point. Robin?
Thanks, Brittany. I am excited to see so many people here. I see that we have people from all sorts of departments, and we also have a mix of, looks like, undergraduates and graduate students and faculty members. So hopefully I have something for everyone here. All right. So in this session, I would like to describe annotated bibliographies for you, describe the different types of annotations that can be part of your bibliography. And the core part will be what I see as the 4 steps to writing the most common type of annotated bibliography. I'm also going to see how many times I could say annotated bibliography in 25 minutes. So, all right. So what in the world is an annotated bibliography? Well, first, a bibliography is a list of books or articles or other information resources about a subject. And you're probably familiar with this because you've put a works cited or references page in a research paper or a presentation, and it often looks like this reference list that I have on the side. An annotation is another word for a note. And if you annotate a bibliography, you are adding notes to it. So I have an example right here that just shows you an annotation for this book about fired clay. And don't worry, you don't have to read all these things. I'm just showing you the examples. So an annotated bibliography, when we put these together, is a list of citations that have notes attached to them. And it expands that very simple list so that there is much more in-depth information than just where to find the source. An annotated bibliography lets you, the author, and other researchers have a focused and critical summary of the subject of the bibliography. So it can really show a deeper dive into what these sources are about and how people can use them. And for this, I like to compare annotated bibliographies to snapshots. So imagine that you are going hiking and you're going hiking with your friends. One of the things you, of course, are going to do is take pictures because hopefully hiking has lots of really great views and scenery. And like most of us, you're probably going to put those pictures up on some sort of social media. This might be Facebook. It might be Instagram. You might make a TikTok that is combining all the photos that you took on your hike. And this is what I kind of compare that kind of social media snapshot of, hey, this is this activity I did, to an annotated bibliography. If that doesn't make sense right now, hopefully it will by the end of this session. So There are a few different types of annotations, different notes we can attach to a citation. Descriptive annotations are just a summary. This is the work, and then this is what they talk about in that book or article. You're going to find these mostly in journals where they might just be providing a list, like here are, like this citation is for podcasting, so here are some resources on podcasting, and they tell you about them. An evaluative annotation goes beyond a simple summary, and it includes a value judgment. They might critique the research that was done in an article, or dive into the author's point of view that they wrote their book around. It's going to evaluate the information that is there. And then there's a combination. Combination annotations, like it sounds like, is a combination of summarizing and evaluating. And this is actually what you'll find for most student assignments. So if you're a student, you're probably going to be asked to do a combination annotation. And faculty, if you're looking to incorporate this into your class, this is usually the thing that you want students to do. It's this combination where you both describe and evaluate. So back to our hiking adventure. We can track these 4 steps to writing a combination annotation to our social media about hiking. The first step is citing, which in our Polaroids are pics or it didn't happen, because we all know that is true. If you can't prove that you did it, it's like you didn't do it. We summarize, which here is we're just describing what we did. We went hiking with our friends. You assess, which talks about, like in our social media would say, this is the best picture because the light is coming from this angle and you can see this great view. So you're looking at which are the quality photographs to include in your social media. And reflect. You might talk about how awesome the hike was and how it was 2 miles longer than you usually do, and you feel great about that. So this is the type of thing that we're going to do for our annotated bibliography. And I'm going to talk about all these steps in turn. So our first step is citing, and that is our pics or it didn't happen. This is simply where to find this information source. And we're citing it the same reason we cite in a bibliography, to show where we found this information and where someone else can find it again. You're going to use the style that's appropriate for your assignment or your discipline. And the most likely this will be APA style, MLA style, or Chicago. And for this, definitely students check with your instructors. If it doesn't say what style to use, make sure you ask that question, what style should I use? So, and if you're not sure, if they say it doesn't matter what you use, make sure you pick one and you stick with that. Make sure you use the same style through the whole bibliography. Don't jump around. And some are more appropriate for the different types of information that you're going to use. APA is usually used in social science, psychology, education. MLA is used often in literature. Chicago, art uses Chicago, history uses Chicago. And then even some of the sciences, they might use APA or they might have their own specialized citation style. So just check, ask that question. If you have any questions about how to cite a source, we do have a citation guide that breaks down these 3 most popular styles and answers the most common questions people have for that. And if you ever do need help with citing, you can always ask a librarian and we're happy to help with that. So this is pretty straightforward. Cite. So on this side here in my example, we have the citation from from 2017. It's from the Journal of Adolescent Research. Pray that God will change you. The religious social ecology of bias-based bullying targeting sexual and gender minority youth. A qualitative study of service providers and educators. Pick the longest title ever. But that's our citation so that our readers of our bibliography know where to find the information. Our second step is to summarize the source. So in our snapshot, we said they're hiking with the fam. It's what we did. So summarizing your source is an analysis of what the source is about. You have several questions you can answer in summarizing. What is it about? What topics are covered in that resource? What are the main arguments that the writers are making? What claims are they making? What are their evidence that they use? Did they do original research? Is usually a lot of times with a research article, they have done a study or an experiment or some sort of thing where they've looked at something and analyzed it. So did they do their original research? Or is it a case where they looked at the research of others? And both are valid. You just need to make sure you know which one they are doing, and you want your readers to know that as well. So in our summary, we say, this study, which concludes that religion plays a role in homophobia, documents bullying trends towards LGBTQ plus teens in Canada through interviews with teachers and therapists. So it tells you exactly what this paper is about and how they went about it. They did interviews with different people. Now, summarizing can seem pretty easy, like, yes, you're just going to summarize what that whole article is about. But that can be a little intimidating, especially with an article that might be 10 pages, 20 pages, 30 pages long, or even a book that might be hundreds of pages, or a dissertation that definitely is hundreds of pages long. It can be a little intimidating. And I've noticed that students struggle with this, and especially when it comes to not accidentally plagiarizing. And students are very worried about this. So here I have some steps to help you with summarizing. My first advice when you need to summarize something is to read the content. But my advice is you don't have to read it from beginning to end. You can skip around a little bit. It's not a novel, so you can move around. Especially with research articles, they have different sections. So you can start with sections like the introduction and then move to the conclusion, because that's what's going to tell you what the article is about. And one, you have to understand that because you're reading it. But two, you're going to need to talk about that in your summary. So you can look at like the introduction, then jump down to the conclusion, and then go more deeper into the discussion that they have. So don't be afraid to skip around so that you get the information you need for the task that you need to do. While you're reading, take notes. Think about the main ideas that you're reading. If there's any really important details, like one of the important details for this study was that they talked about to teens, they talked to teachers and therapists. So that's a note that you would make about the source. And take notes usually in your own words. And you can do this in all sorts of ways. You can do it by hand. There is a system called the Cornell note-taking system, which is very popular. Or you can do things like sketch notes, which is you kind of doodle and draw different ideas that way. If you've never heard of sketch notes, go Google it. It's pretty awesome, and it works really well for some people. So once you've read and taken some notes, give yourself some time to think. Think over that content. Let it like sit in your brain and like connect to the other things that you know about. Don't feel like you have to rush into this. Make sure you plan enough time in your assignment to think about things. And then go to write your summary. You want to write this in your own words. So my advice is not to look at the article when you're writing. Look at your notes to the article. Because when you're looking at the article, you tend to want to just use the words that are right in front of you. And that would be using those authors' words, which would be accidentally plagiarizing, which we want to avoid. So read the source, take some notes on it, let it sit in your brain and think about it, and then go and write using your own ideas and work. That's our second step. Step 3 is assess. Going to assess the information. This is that evaluative part of the combination. So just like we might look at all the pictures we took on our hike and we might discard some because they're not so good because your eyes are closed. Or look at some and say, this is a really awesome pic of my friend. I'm definitely going to use this in my social media. Definitely going to put that on Instagram for them. You're going to do the same thing for your article. You're going to ask, why is the information in this resource good information? Why is it something that folks should look at? Some questions you could ask while you're doing this. Is it scholarly? Is it a scholarly source? Is it peer reviewed? Is it reliable information? Does it seem like it makes sense? Is it current for the field? Current information will vary depending on your discipline. A lot of times in nursing, I saw one of the nursing books, you want the most current information, but in a field like history, current is going to be relative to your topic. So in some things, it's okay if a document is 300 years old, because it's fine for the topic. Is the author an expert on the topic? What are their credentials? Usually you at least have the author's names, but in many resources, it will at least tell you the institutions they are working for or writing for. And then if you don't know that, you can at least Google them, see if they've written other papers, if they have other articles, what their expertise is. They're also going to see if it's biased. Bias, don't worry if they have a point of view. That's usually good. But you want to see, are they writing this for a certain reason? Are they writing this to promote a product because they might be making money off of it? That type of bias you definitely want to be aware of. And what are the limitations of the data they use? Is there a, if you look at their data and say, well, their sample size, they only interviewed 5 people. That's not a very big sample size. So you might talk about that in your assessment. It has good information, but the sample size was small. So for this article, for assessing it, we said this peer-reviewed article presented the results of the well-designed, though small, study, which collected data from a diverse population of service providers and used accepted methods to ensure the quality of the data. The Journal of Adolescent Research is well respected within the field. So we're talking about where it came from and the type of study they did. It just mentioned that this was a small study, but a good one. Now, this is another thing that there are several ways to do this, to assess. You might be asking yourself, well, how do I figure out this information? A couple things that you can think about. You could ask the 5 W's, who, what, when, where, and why, to put into your assessment. There's the SIFT method, which has you stop, look around, and see what information is connected to this information. If there's better coverage of the information, trace the references, and go backwards from there. We have the very popular CRAP test, which you evaluate the currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose of a source. And this assessment does kind of follow the CRAP test. And there's also the BEAM method, which you look at the background of a source or visit the argument and the method. So there are many ways to go about this, and faculty, if you're thinking of putting annotated bibliographies into an assignment, you might tell students, what method you would like them to use when assessing the sources. And finally, so we're going to reflect. Reflect is how can you use this information? In our social media snapshot of hiking, we said that this hike helped build our endurance and confidence. So this is giving advice to the other people who are looking at your Instagram or your TikTok, saying this is a really great hike, you should do it too. You're going to do the same thing with your annotation. How can you use the information? What is the most useful part of it? If this is for a research project you're doing, how can you use it for your research project? Why did you choose this information? How does it fit in with the other topics that you're talking about? How can other people who are reading your annotated bibliography use this information? Will it help them know more background on a topic? Will it help them with a different argument? Does it demonstrate a point? An example of this is just providing an annotated bibliography on a subject to help people learn more things. Like I was talking to some teachers, students, and they need to teach. So when you're a teacher in a high school, you have to teach so many different things. So I had to teach speech, debate, forensics, theater, and some other stuff too. So I was not as strong in debate. So I would look at annotated bibliographies that told me what sources to go to so I could be a better debate teacher. So that's the type of thing that you're including in the reflection. How can this help other people? So for this reflection, we say the information in the study that connects religious faith to homophobic bullying supports the argument that LGBTQ plus teens of faith may suffer mental health consequences if they choose to stay in the church. So this tells the reader exactly what help or what information they're going to find in this source and how it might help their paper or their presentation.
Robin,
Mm-hmm.
We have had a question come up in the chat, and I thought this might be the right time to pose that. So the question is saying, isn't this just a short summary of an article that's a particular length? Specifically, the assessment and maybe some of these other components seem generic, and so shouldn't it be more specific or more critical? So that's kind of the question that's been posed.
Okay. It really depends. A lot of times with a descriptive annotated bibliography, it's just, this is what this article is about. Bam. Especially when doing this for assignments in academia, we're going to be looking at that assessment and reflection portion. It can be more in depth, or I hate to be like, it depends, but it really does depend. It might depend on your discipline. It might depend on the needs of why you're doing the annotated bibliography. If you're doing the annotated bib in preparation for a longer paper, that's going to be slightly different than if you're doing it if you want to publish it and share it with other researchers. I was trying to look at the rest of the question that Brittany just said, but I am not seeing that for some reason in the chat.
It was a direct question to me, Robin, so that's why you're not seeing it. And I think, yeah, I think the idea behind the question, and feel free if you want to unmute and ask this a little bit more, but I think the idea behind it is it just seems very generic, and perhaps it should be more specific versus summary and maybe more critical of the piece of the article that's being read.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, a lot in there.
Yeah, Robin, it's Trish. I was the one who asked the question. So I guess maybe I'm looking at a perspective. So if this were a standalone assignment to create an annotated bibliography for a proposed research project or question, but you're not actually going to write that paper, if you will, then seeking input from some instructors or, those in education on the line or on this call, would you anticipate that it would be much more evaluative, much more in depth as a standalone assignment? Okay.
Yes. So yeah, that again just depends how you're incorporating that. You might require it to be longer or answer certain questions about each source, or go more in depth with that evaluative piece. That's definitely going to depend on that. And some of the examples that I found definitely did that. Let me click my thing and just see what my next slide is. Just show you. Okay, I'm going to go back. Sorry, going backwards. I want to show you a certain example. So this is very descriptive. This was the annotation. It was like, here's what it's about. That is probably not what you want from what you're saying. What might be more suited. There we go. Sorry, going backwards. I want the next one, I think. Yes. Okay. So this example annotation was from an annotated bibliography on ceramics, and these were much longer. This was actually the shortest one on the page, and I picked it simply just because it fit nicely in my presentation. But these were much longer and went much more in depth on the content of the source and evaluating it. So, it still kind of says, my answer still it means it depends, but if that's what you want your students to do, then definitely make sure you emphasize that in your assignment and in instructing them. Does that help? And I'm going to go forward. I'm sorry, I don't mean to make anyone sick. That is where things like these types of assessment methods will be, if valuable. The 5 W's is like the lightest part of the assessment. If you want to go deeper assessment, you're going to go more down that list, especially with the beam method. If you really want your students to dig deeper at that, you can look at things like the CRAP test and the beam method, and tell them, use these things when you are assessing, answer these questions. And if you have more questions about those methods, let me know and we can talk about it. I think I went too far. Okay, reflection, have this. So then, once we have all the parts and whatever part needs to be for our assignment, we're going to put it all together. I just want to have this here. So, because when I put them on these slides, I separated them out and I put these nice little things next to them: cite, summarize, assess, reflect. But when you write the actual annotation, you're going to make it one cohesive paragraph and format it according to your citation style. This is an APA style, so most of them are going to require a hanging indent and have one or two cohesive paragraphs, depending on if you have a word limit. In general, a lot of annotations, most annotations are 100 to 200 words. But again, that can differ depending on your subject. If you want a different assignment, whatever the publisher wants, all that. But you want it to be one cohesive paragraph that can be read easily. Oh, Chelsea. That's a good question, Chelsea. Chelsea asks, if our teacher does not tell us what method to use, just says to make an annotated bibliography, how do we know which way to use or how long to do it? Should we ask for the professor for more requirements of what they want? Yes, always ask for more information. You could do, and just tell them, there are different types of annotated bibliographies. What would you like us to do? How long should the annotation be? The information I've given you here is in general, this is what's included in general. This is how long it is. So it's a starting point to get your brain around that. And please, please, please ask your professor. Yes, email your professor and be like, what do you mean by this? Please let me know. I'm sure many of your other students have the same question.
So Robin, is this cohesive paragraph, is it 100? Is it 150? Is it 200? How many words is that actually? Or, you know, I know you're saying 100 to 200, but.
I can find it up for you.
Because I know in our assignment, it's been listed to do 100 words, but I think based on some other comments about the assignment that I'm not sure 100 words is going to suffice. But like Chelsea mentioned, I think I need to follow up with my professor too.
Yeah, always ask, and they usually don't mind that you ask, but they probably didn't realize that they didn't tell it to you. I forget how many exactly this is. I know it's less than 200. And let's see. I'll try to get that for you. Let me show you the next thing, and then as we're looking at some things, I will see how many that is. I can't remember off the top of my head. This is an example of APA, and I wanted to give you one more example. This is a citation in Chicago style. This is done from a student. It is very generously shared by one of our graduate assistants, Danny Knoll, who's in the history department, and she is doing an annotated bibliography on historical geography. So she has written this annotation, and once again, I've split it up just so you can see the different parts of how she's done it. And then the next one, oh, you're doing awesome. So Chelsea, I have a resource for you. So when she writes it in one cohesive paragraph, which I know this one is more than 200 words. I think she was not given an exact, she wasn't given a limit, but I did look at the word count for this. It's more than 200. I don't remember exactly, but that's what this looks like. Questions. I'm going to pause just a moment because I know there's a lot of text on the screen. You might want to read it to see how Danny wrote it. But do we have questions while we pause for just a moment? One thing I really liked that Danny did was she had, back in the assessment part, she kind of looked at a couple different things. So she had part 1 and part 2. And then when she wrote her paragraph, she actually kind of split those two parts up to just make a more cohesive, readable paragraph. So she has part 1, which she talks about how the author is an expert. And then she talks about biases. So those are actually split up in her paragraph, but it just makes a better reading experience. She talks about being an expert at the beginning, but then dives into the biases elsewhere. So you don't, there's these 4 parts with the parts that are in the annotation. You don't have to be like very structured. You can mix up to write a good paragraph. Okay, so this resource that I know Chelsea definitely is going to be interested in, and others might be, is, well, okay, when I have Ask a Librarian, Ask a Librarian. You can always ask us for help. Ask a Librarian. You can call us, you can email us, you can chat with us, you can make an appointment, come to my office and we can sit down and talk about this. Thanks, Brittany. So you can always ask a librarian for help with this. The Writing Center can also help you with writing portion of it. And I wanted to share this guide with you. Brittany has put a link in the chat. This is our annotated bibliography guide. And this is a mini website that we put together just on annotated bibliographies. We have a video there that covers that as well. So whichever way you learn best, you can look at that. And we've dived deeper into all the things that I've just talked about on this guide. And Chelsea, you might want to look at that because Danny shared her process and what she was thinking as she wrote those different sections of her bibliography. So you might check that out and see, because she just explained, I was looking at this and I found this out, so then I wrote this, that type of thing, kind of walks you through that. Now I can't remember. Clicked off my thing that told me what I was doing. I'm so sorry. Okay. Like I said, you could always ask us for help. Faculty, I know some of you are in here. I will be very glad to help you with this too, especially if you are designing assignments. So students, you can come to me for help with your assignments. Faculty, I will help you make those assignments. And I think I stepped over Brittany's part. So take it away, Brittany.
That's okay, Robin. If you could just move to the next slide for me. So as Robin was just mentioning, this is really just the time to connect you with those additional online resources. You can always reach out directly to Robin, or as she mentioned, you can utilize the Ask a Librarian service. So if you go to the next slide, Robin, our librarians are available in all of these different ways. And so you can go to that page there that I will put in the chat again, in order to communicate with any of our teaching and research librarians, and they can help you with this research process. The next page, Robin, is to connect you all with the Forsyth Library app. So if you want to take out a mobile device, you can actually scan that QR code and it will give you instructions to install the app. I have also put the link in the chat, and so you can also connect to it through that link. And this app will provide you with the Ask a Librarian service, all the different contact methods that was just on the previous screen. You will also have quick access to the different subject and course guides. So some of them one of them may be how to do an annotated bibliography, which is a link that I put in the chat previously. And then other tutorials, Chelsea, you referenced some of them that you may have been interacting with, and then other very specific subject guides. So particular subjects such as history and other areas like that. So take some time to install that app and you will have some of that research help just at your fingertips. So I encourage you to do that. And then the next part, Robin, just another reminder that we will make this recording available. So Robin put together this great presentation that had lots of good examples. So if you wanted to refer back to that, the recording will be available on our YouTube channel here just in the next day or two. So be on the lookout for that. Of course, we've connected you with the Ask a Librarian resource, with our app, and then other information and other research resources you can find on our website. So please do connect with all these resources available to you. So that brings us here towards the close. Robin, the next slide I think is just to announce the winner of today's prize basket, just for being here with us and learning a bit more about annotated bibliographies. So congratulations to Marnie Cole for winning today's prize basket. Marnie, if you want to just send me a direct chat with your t-shirt size, and I will get that basket ready for you, and we'll follow up via email with some more information on how to pick that up and when it's available. So last slide, Robin, and that brings us to the conclusion of today's session. Again, please don't hesitate to reach out to Robin or any other library employee, and we will help connect you with the resources you need. We will formally conclude the session, but Robin and I will stay on for a few moments if there are any last questions or comments about today's session. So thank you all so much for attending, and we hope to see you and talk with you soon.